What makes the Resident Evil 4 Remake village sequence so much more brutal than the original is the apparent lack of humanity right at the gates. There are heads on the wall, and as you enter the village, one of them falls off. Leon S. Kennedy is ill-equipped to deal with this situation, but he still investigates like the good Boy Scout he is. At the same time, he must now witness the death of his companions. At least one of them. And it is the most fiery and brutal death possible. The body before you slowly burns as the sequence goes on. And at the end we can see him charring further and further away. What makes this so much darker is that Leon S. Kennedy before was only looking at a dead body that was on fire. Now he watched his companion burn. Someone he knew literally burned to death before his eyes. Between the upgraded aesthetics and overall increased dark tone, Resident Evil 4 is now much more brutal on a scale that I didn't expect. After multiple playthroughs of the chainsaw demo of Resident Evil 4, I've noted that you can play almost this entire sequence stealthily, up until the point you're discovered, of course. And you can be discovered in a massive amount of different ways. If you bust through this window, they come investigate it. If you kick a box outside, they will come take a look and see what's going on, what's all the ruckus. And when they discover you, a timer starts, of sorts. A chainsaw eventually enters the situation. Unlike the original, the chainsaw cannot be skipped. That's what makes this the chainsaw demo, I assume. The amount of firepower you have can deal with the villagers and the chainsaw, but you have to be very strategic in how you use what you have at your disposal. With the addition of stealth only making the game that much deeper, it is suggested that you sneak around, gather your supplies, and then come up with some kind of attack or counterattack. With this being one of my earlier runs in the chainsaw demo, I had later on attempted to play stealth, and I got pretty far into the village, I must say. A stealthy approach is possible, but it's not quite possible to get through the entire sequence without being spotted. With the villagers now knowing my presence, a timer is counting down in which I must survive this onslaught, and it is much more intense than the original. Leon's melee attacks now have actual impact, sending enemies flying against the wall. The versatility and usefulness of the knife is now more prevalent than ever, as it has simply been reduced to the pull of a trigger on your controller. The smoothness and weight to shooting is now superb compared to what it was in the original.
Bill me for the repairs later.
Not only now has the speed of combat been increased, but also looting and picking up any materials you need. With Capcom's wide range of enhancements to both the ballistic and melee combat in Resident Evil 4, Leon S. Kennedy's journey is now going to be more thrilling than ever, thanks to these details. Not only is Leon's movement more fluid and natural, but the enemies as well share this more natural fluidity to them. My recollection of the original Resident Evil 4 is that it was much easier for enemies to hit you by throwing their weapons at you. This game, it feels like they actually have to try, unlike before. One significant detail most people will notice today is that the Chainsaw Man in Resident Evil 4 2023 is non-optional. The original Chainsaw Man could be skipped if you didn't trigger him by activating a certain event. With Leon's enhanced combat abilities also comes a larger number of enemies. What I noticed is that there are at least double the amount of enemies from the original surrounding the village, at all times coming at Leon. One change I would love to see made is kind of strange and hard to describe unless you played the demo at least 9 times or so. If you go into the cabin, it will trigger the Chainsaw Man. If you wait outside and fight the villagers, it will trigger the Chainsaw Man. But if you trigger 2 Chainsaw Men, 2 don't show up. I would absolutely love to see them both coming at you. 2 Chainsaw Men in Resident Evil 4 Remake, stacking the odds against Leon. I can't even imagine, but I would love to see it come to fruition. The reality is, 2 chainsaws for the price of 1, baby.
Oh, nice.
With the enhancements to combat being as intense as they are, we can almost take it to the level of John Wick in terms of action combat capabilities. We're not quite at that point, but I don't think we need to be. Considering we came from what I would call a tank-controlled situation, this is beyond a slam dunk. This feels so much smoother. The pace at which you're now able to stop, choose your target, and keep moving as you pick them off. It is just stunning to even go back and experience the previous game, because it is so much slower, you will not be able to return. It is just that way. And this is coming from someone who thinks that the generation of fixed camera angle games is the best. The tip top of Resident Evil to me is the fixed camera angle generation, but this is such an enhancement that I am more than willing to say that I am never returning to the original Resident Evil 4. This is the supreme way it was supposed to be anyway. With the most obvious enhancement being added tone and texture and detail, the aesthetic has now increased to a degree that Resident Evil has not seen before, and I would call this the most detailed remake to date when it comes to the franchise.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Resident Evil 4 maintains its one-liners, but still provides us with a much, much darker experience. I have beaten the original Resident Evil 4 on GameCube 8 times, and once on current-gen consoles. Maybe I had a few runs in between there, but I can pretty much verbatim, from front to back, remember the entire experience. And it begins with a notable difference here. That being the dead officer. He's already dead. It's just a burning corpse. And the most notable of all, from what you can see right here, is that the aesthetic and the overall tone is almost non-existent. With no real chance for stealth in the original Resident Evil 4, all you can really do is get within 2 feet of your target's range, and then start taking them out at the kneecaps. And then it's all guns on deck.
a ser picadillo.
With there being so many differences within the presentation of Resident Evil 4 to the Resident Evil 4 remake, I gotta say my favorite enhancement is the lack of looking at the loot as you pick it up. Look at this chest of diamonds, look at this brooch, look at this box of bullets. Picking up your loot is now as simple as picking it up and moving. During my return to this sequence, something I truly stood in awe at was how dead it felt within this village. Before, it didn't feel as dead, but now that I can see they can have 15 or so enemies on the screen at once, it truly feels like a community is coming after you. An established community that has now been indoctrinated by some madman, hell-bent on world domination and then some. This truly is nothing more than an enhancement for Resident Evil. From both the gore aspect, to the combat aspect, to simply the camera itself, I see nothing but upgrades here. The enemy's reaction to gunfire used to be so stiff, but now it feels like they react to each individual bullet in a variety of different ways. It's not just stuck down to one or two animations. And my god, how much more can I compliment the knife? It's as simple as this, people. Versatility and usefulness comes down to how easy it is to control. Controlling the knife before was horrible. Controlling the knife before felt like a hindrance. Something you do just to save ammo, despite you cringing while you do it. I have always felt that way about the knife in Resident Evil 4. Almost totally useless, but now it is so much better. Controlling Leon is now much more athletic and less on rails. Speaking of controls, for those who do not know, Resident Evil 4 was originally built around the GameCube itself. The controls on the GameCube controller feel magnificent because they were built for that controller. This game has never felt the same, and it never will ever again. But this has to be one of the finest examples of an upgrade I have seen so far. When it comes to the controls, you don't just have to stand there and aim. You don't have to stand there and aim your knife and then point it to the point which you need it to be. Slicing and dicing is now as easy as pulling the trigger. This game needed an enhancement, and everything I have seen so far leads me to believe that this is the perfect opportunity for Capcom to truly take a legendary game that changed everything and push it forward into the modern era.
Lord Sattler.
From the graphics, to the presentation, to the aesthetics and overall tone, down to the writing and delivery, the Resident Evil 4 remake is a perfect remake, and I cannot wait to dive into more. This is Dylan in the details, and until next time, ta-ta.